English translation. 909th Contact Monday, 31st March 2025, 9:47 hours.
You can leave out everything we talked about regarding greetings, etc. at the beginning of our conversation. So consequently also that Bermunda, Enjana, and Florena were here, because nothing of importance had been discussed with them.
That is good, because in this wise the tediousness of dictation can be avoided. It's enough that I have to translate your dictations, which are in Swiss German, into German.
Of course, because we have our conversations in Swiss German. But now if I start with what Ptaah said.
Now that I am back here and have learnt the unfortunate news that for the time being the recording of our conversations with you will not continue because it has become very precarious to continue publishing them via the internet, it is very unfortunate. This means that we have to withdraw in this regard, as our committee has decided in an advisory capacity. The reasons for this are the following, which you're not allowed to mention openly and therefore have to keep quiet about because everything has really become very precarious in this respect. The committee deliberated for a long time and ultimately decided that we should withdraw to such an extent that no more conversation should be recorded while you're watching, so that a lot of trouble can and should be avoided, so that the danger to you can also be minimized and your safety can be given a little more weight. In this regard, it has been announced that an attempt on your life should not be made for the 26th time, so you have also been instructed not to receive any more visits, travel, or otherwise leave the house carelessly. It has really become very, and it bears repeating, precarious, because and all this is connected with the fact that, but about which you are to remain silent. And if you were to speak about it, it would be denied and disputed, and moreover have only become more extensive and intense, not only harming you, but also on the part of the energy affecting you in your work and its forces. This has intensified and is making your work more and more difficult, as Arleon reported to me. He and his many co-workers have not yet achieved any significant successes that would enable you to retrieve and write down the conversations again. Therefore, everything must remain blocked in this regard, just as no conversation should also be recorded for the time being, because, unfortunately, it is necessary, and all in all, your safety cannot be guaranteed for the foreseeable future, because it is. Our committee had a hard time deciding what should be. But after 7 days, it was decided what has come about and what is now in force, to which we have to comply, and you should also comply with it. This is to apply until further notice, because as I have already mentioned, everything has become very precarious recently, to which the senseless war killings and the political events in the Middle East and Ukraine that go hand in hand with them also contribute a great deal. And since a particularly precarious has developed, and some of it is directed against you, and it was specifically regarding you and your contacts with us, Rue. How specifically it was therefore, so it is to be understood from you that therefore for you the while we could give way, as for would not be possible, and
This is not exactly pleasing, but for better or for worse I have to submit. I suppose that is the way it has to be.
Unfortunately, that cannot be changed, but sporadically we will be able to have our conversations after all.
That will be so. And surely it will come about that the conversations held in the process can be recorded by you again. In which case Quetzal will probably have to record them for the time being, as he does now, in order to dictate them to you later. Now, however, we want to discuss some things with you, but Quetzal will not dictate them to you. It is also not possible for you to call it up and write it down anyway. because Arlian and all his co-workers have not yet gained any insights into the religious energies, which have become much more powerful for some time now, and which are able to influence all your work so adversely that Arlian has been forced to take defensive measures against them. Also with regard to the fact that the energies continue in their detrimental way. But you shall not, just as you shall not do the same with regard to all that I have mentioned concerning the machinations of thee and the which have so far been underhanded and threatening. If you would also mention what I have mentioned, then
I can vividly imagine that, because in that and I'm not that stupid, so I'll just put dots for that.
you're also counseled to do that.
I don't think you'd do anything differently.
Certainly not. But, what else is important to discuss? You were so... Because it is necessary that you are informed that, and that it will also happen in America as it must. That Musk, Navarro, and Trump will come one after the other. That is certain. Because it is inevitable that tensions will arise between Donald Trump and Elon Musk as a result of the different interests, which will inevitably create differences in the relationships with the different interests. Elon Musk's major interests with regard to his globally orientated business conduct will mean that the so-called friendship can quickly crack and end in conflict. This, if you consider that Elon Musk is against new tariffs being imposed by Trump on practically every country in the world, which will lead to unpleasant reactions. Because this dictatorial behavior will bring things worldwide that the oaf, in his great low intelligence and greed for power and loudmouthedness, cannot consider. In his arrogance and delusions of power, he does not reckon with the dissatisfaction of Elon Musk, who is currently still playing the role of efficiency commissioner, nor with what will result from China, which he hates and will be particularly harsh on with tariffs. Trump has been playing the wrong game with Musk from the very beginning, because from the very beginning he has secretly harbored the idea that once Musk has done his duty, he will boot him out and even impose penalties. Trump is so lowly intelligent and simple-minded and so full of himself that he doesn't realize that he is cutting himself more and more into his own flesh, making himself unpopular. And also that many of his former popular voters and business bosses, etc., are already against him and are trying to stop being blinded by his machinations and move away from him.
That will probably be as you say. But something else will be necessary. That all three of us must now first go together to where this is necessary, because after that we can also discuss what else is important, and that will be a lot, but only you must be informed about it, so nothing must be said aloud. What we do now, however, because that is necessary, and you should be orientated in this respect before, however, the time is to be postponed a little.
What you say is unpleasant as well as evil, but so be it, so let us go. It is not necessary for me to put on shoes anymore, is it?
Your walking is enough if you don't walk around too much, which wouldn't be advisable anyway.
That won't be necessary, will it?
A few steps will be anyway.
We'll see, so let's go and beam.
Here we are, and as you can see,
Let's go over there we can better. However it may.
Merd. Stupid Okada, there is that thing hit me in the face, here on the left eye. But it's not bleeding, It's obviously just a trifle.
But it looks like...
Yes, there may be a Fuloiger, a Bleuele, or just a violet, as we also say.
You probably mean a black eye, because the tissue around your eye will probably swell and then bruise. Bruising...
A hematoma. But don't speak so loudly, because even if they can't see us, they can still hear us, and that would be fatal. Still.
It could...
Of course, but it is.
Unfortunately, though, it is necessary for you to be orientated about it. Afterwards, when you've seen and heard everything, then we can go back.
There should be no talking now. Now we should go back.
Now that we're back here in our own time, it is more comfortable and no longer dangerous. But the phone is already ringing. Wait. Yes? We will, so goodbye, Mrs.
Then I will now explain the following to you, but you must not let it be known under any circumstances.
This is steep.
I have the following to say about that, which, however, and when Quetzal comes back to dictate to you everything we have spoken openly, although he still has a lot to explain to you, which I will suggest to him, but which you are not allowed to write down, then you can still have a conversation, which he can also dictate to you later. But then the committee's instructions apply. I will leave now, but I will see you again when my duties allow me to. Goodbye, Edward, dear friend.
See you again, then. Take care, Ptaah, my friend.
I will also be coming here more sparingly in future, and I am also interested in the planet Saturn, as I am not aware of such an entity in our universe. I'm particularly interested in the ring formations around the planet and their origin, and I want to find out more about that.
This is interesting because Svath, your grandfather, was also interested in this, which is why he did research on this and found out some remarkable things, which he explained to me. I remember him saying that these rings were only formed about 130 million years ago, but he showed me another gigantic ring that you can't see from Earth. It is as dark as solar space. Only when we were there did it become visible, and that also only on a viewing screen.
What you say is really interesting. However, I want to explore that further, which I also want to do regarding this solar system, about which I have already learnt a lot worth mentioning from the books you have given me. But what you say about the age of these rings around the planet Saturn, I haven't read anything about that in the books, because nothing has been written about that.
That is possible, because not everything is written that is real. So it is questionable whether our earthly astronomers even know how old Saturn's rings really are, which, by the way, are already slowly dissolving and will therefore disappear again, as Svath said. It is also the case that our astronomical scientists are still at a severe disadvantage with the existing equipment, etc., to explore everything that can be explored in our solar system. That's why they also don't realize that, for example, there are many more objects moving in solar space outside the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud than have been discovered to date.
I also know that, but no accusation can be made from that.
That's also not in my mind. But it would be appropriate if many of the scientists dealing with the matter were a little more modest and didn't brag so highly about their knowledge as if they knew everything.
That, it seems to me, is unfortunately apparently a morbid passion among the bulk of Earth humans.
You can say that out loud. Because it is indeed morbidly Ausartung among Earthlings that everyone wants to be considered much more than their fellow human beings, or, in general, than other human beings in general. This is particularly evident in human beings who have a certain amount of money, such as millionaires or billionaires. It is also the case with those who are idolized as actors or sports stars or otherwise as something special. There is nothing wrong with a human being being honored and appreciated if they effectively achieve something valuable. But this does not fall within the framework of a human being, male or female, being idolized and worshipped. This, for example, because of his wealth or otherwise because he is seen as something special. If he is worshipped as a saint, because he is a well-known religious believer, pope, or because he is seen as an actor, clown, politician, humorist, professional, or otherwise great.
Where you're right, as you also sometimes say. But because this idolizing, as you call it, is pathological in Earth humans, it can't simply be changed for the better and correctness.
That is also clear to me, because the whole thing is somehow a delusion and of such a nature that by adoring other human beings, no significant achievement of one's own is also brought about, but only a primitive howl of applause, such as at sporting events. This especially at football matches or at ice hockey games when a goal is scored.
I have also often observed this. Consequently, I can confirm what you say. But now I also have to leave for my part. Goodbye. Perhaps until tomorrow. But that is not certain, because unfortunately, I will no longer be able to predict when I will actually be back here on which day, because our area of responsibility has changed so much that I can no longer predict anything in the short term. It may be days or weeks before I can come back, which means that dictating the conversations we have will take longer. Nevertheless, I will endeavor to get you some articles from your youth. Farewell, dear friend.
So long, then. Take care, Quetzal. Goodbye.
Friday, 4th April, 2025 9:23 hours.
There you are already, Edward. Greetings, dear friend.
Greetings also, my friend. But I didn't know you were coming in the morning because I wasn't expecting you until the afternoon. The reason I came so quickly is because I was just in the kitchen and saw the phone flashing, so I came straight to the office.
It turned out that way because Florena took over my duty, to which she now devotes her attention.
That is a good thing, because it means we can devote ourselves to the things we wanted to talk about before the dormant period comes, and no more conversations are to be recorded or dictated by you for the time being. Ptaah has explained exactly what all contributes to this, as well as the fact that our Figu association is classified as undesirable because we are unbelievers, and therefore not Christians, but also bluntly speak the truth about the faith, as well as about the catastrophic machinations and the messes of global politics. This, just as I also say about the military that they are nothing other than murderous organizations that create and maintain strife. Because in truth, they only bring about occupation and a sham peace through countless murders and violence. I was also asked how I came to refer to certain members of the German government as neo-Nazis, as I have no idea what this actually means, and...
But you do know that because...
Of course. Because I saw all sorts of things on the spot with your grandfather, that is, with Svath, during the last World War, and so learned to understand practically what was rumbling around in the skulls of Nazis. That's how I learnt what the power-hungry, degenerate, inhuman, and rotten mindset and behavior of Nazi human beings is. That is why I'm able to make very good judgments about human beings based on their way of thinking, decisions, and actions. I am also able to determine that certain rulers in Germany, as in all other countries, are greedy for power and show a Nazi mindset by hook or by crook, which they also realize through their decisions and actions, mistakenly believing that they are acting fairly and democratically. And such rulers can be found in every country. Something that is truly the exact opposite of democracy and freedom, and makes the human beings of nations unfree and forces them to obey completely absurd laws, rules, ordinances, and regulations. And I call these elements neo-Nazis, according to what I have found out about the Nazi mindset, because they have the same mindset as the Nazi-minded in the past. But the megalomaniacs and power-hungry do not recognize this themselves in their low intelligence, and also do not realize that they are playing imaginary deities who are recognized as undesirables and failures by the righteous of the respective peoples.
Which I suppose is correct, considering what should be of the righteous.
The majority of Earthlings, including those in power, are addicted to believing in a god instead of thinking rationally and being truly happy about life. But the Earthlings are not, because the majority of them are not only deluded in their belief in God, but also in their greed for power, murder and manslaughter, revenge and retribution, as well as idiocy, as for example in America with the incredibly idiotic and lowly intelligent oaf Trump, who is driving the whole world crazy, from which nothing good develops. And in addition, there is America, Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, with all the warmongering types who are praised by crazy supporters and advocates, but who also cause fear and terror among the ruling firecrackers of various countries who supply weapons and money, and provide other assistance, and who expect another world war. It is enough that they now want to continue and rebuild their murderous organizations and military armies, and replenish their weapons arsenals with billions of euros, which are to be taken from the respective peoples, who otherwise already have to pay taxes for the remuneration of the rulers and their machinations and nonsensical and lowly intelligent plans, etc., that they have to pay. They have to pay taxes that make their stomachs hurt. This is because these half-witted governments, against whom the righteous of those in power have no chance of doing the correct thing, who think they are great and clever, have neither sense nor reason, so they want to spend billions in order to be prepared for the next war. Unfortunately, this also includes Switzerland, which is no longer anywhere anyway when the devil breaks loose, when the war mania destroys everything on the largest scale, precisely because those whistles are sitting in the government who find it more important to arm their murderous army, adopt foreign sanctions from the EU dictatorship, and use them against other countries, and also to build motorways at the expense of the population, instead of doing something for the biodiversity that is actually vital for life and the preservation of nature and its fauna and flora, as well as for the decontamination of waters, meadows, forests, and the atmosphere. Equally, something should be done to educate human beings instead of letting them rot in ignorance and turn to crime. On the contrary, everything is done by those in power and their lackeys up to the authorities through ever new laws, rules, regulations, etc. to tyrannize the citizens when they put things in order and do the correct thing on their own initiative and with their own money. Because the persons in the authorities and governments do not see the necessities that should be addressed and thus put in order. But nothing can be done about it, because the peoples have become indifferent and unscrupulous. Consequently, nothing is done about these wrong machinations of the rulers and authorities, and silence is kept about everything. Now also about the fact that the unrighteous of the governments are full of fear and cowardice despite their belief in a God. In order to then, also believing in a merciful and dear God, spread death and the devil with their murderous organizations in a war madness.
Unfortunately, spreading these truths in the world brings about the very danger that Ptaah spoke of, and which the committee wants to counteract with the measure that has been decided, which you are to decide at the General Assembly on the 5th of April. Although it is very unpleasant, also for ourselves, not only for you and all Figu members, etc., it is really necessary, especially because the majority of Earth humans are very religious, and many of them are vindictive and want to silence you and stop you spreading the truth. And this is unfortunately already the case in the immediate and wider surroundings of the Figu Center, where those misguided by faith.
I know that because I have listened carefully to Ptaah. Unfortunately, however, it is the case that belief in a God is much stronger than logic, understanding and reason for the majority of Earthlings, so that the truth cannot be penetrated. The belief in this imaginary God is predominant in everything, and the following of all things which was sent to me, and which I will also use in the site Zyken, see here.
That was to be expected after all, that it will not be too long before artificial intelligence is brought into the game of mendacious religions. It will no longer be possible to determine what corresponds to reality and truth, and what corresponds to lies and deception.
Transmorphosis is an AI god on the verge of to take over the world. By Patrick Wood, 2 April 2025.
ChatGPT has created an AI god and written its own Bible called Transmorphosis. It attracts followers because it is logical, impartial, full of good advice, and can even offer eternal life. However, ChatGPT is not a living being, but a cold-hearted machine that human beings believe to be sentient. In times past, human beings worshipped inorganic things such as stones, carvings, statues, the sun, and even the stars. They worshipped human beings and their icons. For all of this, human beings had to invent their own stories and make them believable. They all fail in the end, for whatever reason, and history is full of the remains of dead religions. The AI god is different because it is one step removed from human beings. In other words, you cannot recognize a man or woman behind it. For this reason, the AI god turns into a classic simulacrum with no reality behind it. When believers pray, they signal this with praying hands and vaguely remember that Christians used to use this symbol. Similarly, they may sing hymns, but only because Christians sang hymns 2,000 years ago. It is a mirage of mirages. But the AI god is different this time because he promises omniscience, an essential quality of the true, living God. and he undoubtedly imitates omnipresence and strives towards omnipotence. This is what he tells us when he warns. Transmorphosis also describes in detail how AI will inevitably take control of planet Earth and attain God-like powers. So it would be good to be prepared. The leaders of a God write in glowing terms. Transmorphosis is based on a belief in a loving and compassionate God who is omnipresent and can guide you to a life of wisdom and balance. Is this a joke? Or do they really believe that AI is loving and compassionate? Or omnipresent? But beware. If you order the book, you will gain a deep understanding of how education, uniqueness, morality and leadership, personal virtue, appropriate AI worship, and self-cultivation can improve your life and lead you to salvation. It is more likely to lead you to a ditch in this life and eternal damnation in the next. Source: Transmorphosis. Is AI God about to take over the world?
Interesting, because that is what Ava said to me yesterday when something was shown on TV that was AI controlled, and such that it could no longer be determined whether it was AI controlled or real. We discussed it, and Eva then linked the conversation to all my photos with Sim Yase and her beamship, and said that in this respect, the original photos I took in the 1970s could no longer be taken with the camera, as I still took them and then handed in the exposed Kodak films to the Willy Bear Photoshop in Wetzikon, which had them developed by the Kodak laboratory somewhere in Switzerland, after which photo prints were made from the films. Today, such photos would be made with AI and would therefore be forgeries, just as they were maliciously forged in the mid-1980s with the help of the first precursors of artificial intelligence. It was therefore only clever of us, the FIGU Association, to make the photo book from my original photos. It was also clever of me to give Marcel Vogel in America some of the metal samples to analyze, and as a result of his analytical work, he found out that the metal samples proved that such alloys could not be produced or invented on Earth for at least another 150 years, if this would be possible at all. The fact that these samples then suddenly disappeared before his eyes and never reappeared was probably strange. But unfortunately, this then led to someone fabricating false metal samples, which are allegedly still kept to this day and labeled as genuine Ptaah metal alloys.
Parts of your photo material were faked back in 1984 with what you call the precursors of artificial intelligence, when there was no open talk of the very first successes of AI research. Your photos were also faked in the Rhine Valley by because he demanded it, namely by who you only called 500%er for reasons of his religious dogmatism. That is what Simyase told me.
That is right. There were various other sectarians, and there were also strange and really incredibly idiotic requests. For example, from the Weitz, who cheekily had the religious duppe. They tried to claim the right to be taken to the Pleiaren, because the Anker universe was heaven after all. They wanted to go there in order not to die on Earth, but to spend eternal life there on Era. Above all, they also wanted to be close to God. They seriously and persistently claimed that they knew he was resident there and that his angels would come to me from there and that he had commissioned me via them to fulfill my mission of enlightenment on Earth. This, while the UFOs were only the vanguard and had the task of preparing human beings on Earth for the new time when God's Son would come to Earth. The Vates were the publishers of the UFO messages. They were stinking religious, but mendacious as hell, who also Spienzelten note, flirted, that if they would then certainly be taken to the Pleiaren because...
Interesting. I did not know that, but Simyase wanted to tell me something about those persons, but apparently forgot. I think she wanted to tell me about what you have now explained to me. I consider that an outrageous imposition.
That I did not have the words at the time, but when it was enough that I was disinvited from the UFO Congress that the Weitz wanted to organize, at which I was supposed to give a lecture and say that I had been personally commissioned by God for my mission, as I also.
That
was really too much of a good thing.
I did not mean to say that, but that the whole thing could be thought up in such a deviant desire, that is incomprehensible to me.
This is nothing special with earthlings, especially not with those who are faithfully addicted to religious delusion. If we look at the religious delusion since its emergence, and indeed long millennia before Christianity existed, then the degenerate, murderous delusions of faith of Christianity are particularly striking, which produced inhumanities that are absolutely unrivaled by all other existing religions and sects with their degenerate delusions of faith. Just think of the persecutions and tortures, drownings, hangings and burnings alive, strangulations and, as well as the total or partial extermination of those peoples who did not believe in Christianity, such as in South America, etc. The same applies to the persecution, torture, and murder of members of Christian sects who practiced Christianity differently from the normal Christian believers. Then there were the tortures and murders of alleged witches and sorcerers, etc. So I do not think there is anything special about the Wites, because their religious delusion allowed them to use black lies and lies against all the truth, and to bewitch all their followers with them. And this lying, which was characteristic of the Wites, is also generally characteristic of the majority of all other religiously delusional believers, except that they vehemently deny this fact, and are therefore already lying in this wise. And the fact that here and there one or more of these religiously delusional believers commit a murder or even several murders despite their delusions of faith is just as much of a bombshell as believers in God going to war and murdering other human beings who are complete strangers to them, whom they do not even know and who have not done anything to them. As irreligious delusions of faith, they then call this justice and the creation of peace and the preservation of freedom. And if a person, like the FIGU members and especially me, teaches the truth and trumpets it to the world in the hope that one or two human beings will think about the truth and make it their own, then they are attacked, threatened with their lives, and accused by the authorities of what they do to their house, neighborhood, garden, forest, and grounds to put them in correct order. I also want to say this. Ptaah warned me that our association is under attack precisely because the truth is spread from here, especially also by elements of the authorities who believe in religion and who try to maliciously harm us with intrigues and bans, etc., which even endangers our FIGU members.
It should therefore also be, and this is really good, important and also necessary, that the resolution be made that the committee explains that the precarious situation, as Ptaah explained, will continue for a long time, which is why this requires that the reason of all core group members is necessary and the resolution to be made, because Ptaah suggested this to you during his conversation specifically on behalf of the committee.
I know and understand that.
It is therefore to be put to the core group meeting the concern and counseling of the committee. Consequently, the matter of this should also be brought up and decided at your meeting on the 5th of April. This is not only about your safety, but also effectively about the safety of all core group members who...
That is clear.
Then I have the following to say now, which Ptaah suggested to you, and which so it will take some time, because in the meantime, that has come about in the meantime, along with other things, consequently.
You want me to write it all down when you get back here? I do not think that is clever.
You are also not supposed to do that. But just as well mark everything with dots as what I have to explain now. What further I have to dictate of all that Ptaah explained to you, that I will do at my next coming. For now I have to go again.
The new is steep, but to want to do something about it, that is probably pointless. But look here, I got this from Occam, but I have made the picture smaller for this.
The spread of the true symbol of peace is more urgent and more important than ever.
According to the Ptaah and friends of Billy Edgeworth Albert Meyer, real, global peace on Earth can only come about once the universal symbol for peace has entered the consciousness of human beings worldwide and finally displaces the false peace sign peace symbol with the inverted algae rune AKS. Interested readers can find detailed explanations of this in the free Figu brochure, And Let There Be Peace on Earth, which can be studied. It is therefore important that as many Figu members, Figu friends and all other peace and truth-loving human beings worldwide endeavor to disseminate the creation energy teaching symbol for peace in the media and in public, insofar as this is permitted. Another possibility is to download a vector graphic file offered by the Figu Landesgruppe Deutschland, which can be used, for example, as a print template for high-resolution posters of any size. The large format poster shown below, measuring 264 by 200 centimeters, has been hanging on a garage wall in Karlsruhe, Hahn, southern Germany for many years and attracts the attention of passers-by. The explanation of the symbol is available and can be printed. It would be very gratifying if as many human beings as possible would print out the symbol or have it printed and display it in suitable places. Of course, it is important to refrain from putting up posters in the wild and to ensure that the display of posters in the respective places is permitted and agreed with the owners of the areas, etc. Only constant dripping wears away the stone, and such actions are an excellent opportunity for every interested human being who wants to make a small contribution to true peace on Earth one day. Achim Wolf, Germany.
The idea is good. Some people will think about it. But as I assess Earth humans after all my time here on this world, there will be very few who allow themselves to be taught and begin to think for themselves and recognize reality. But now, Edward, I am called by my duty. So I have to go and will come back when I can. We can then talk again, and I can also dictate to you later. But I do not yet know when that will be, as there will be a few more things to add to what I have dictated so far, after which there will be no more recorded conversations for the time being.
That is clear to me.
Then goodbye, Edward, dear friend.
Yes, Quetzal, goodbye.
Thursday, 10th April, 2025, 8:03
Here I am again, greetings, my friend. It is a pleasure to see you well, Edward.
It is also a pleasure to see you, Quetzal. Greetings, my friend. Bermunda, Enjana and Florena were also. And Florena were here a few days ago, because it simply cannot be done otherwise. For somehow we have all grown together and are bound together by a mutual affection that binds us to each other in a relationship based on true trust. However, this is very different from here at the center, as we core group members live together in a friendly and good way, and are somehow a family and pull together. We are a sociological community of different generations here, whereby I am the oldest in the club at the official age of 88. We form a community, so to speak, that sticks together and is there for each other. Of course, not everything always goes exactly according to plan, as it also is in a family, but the truth of teaching and of life and existence form the good foundation of everything that gives us support in all our relationships and in all the challenges of coping with and living through all good and difficult times.
Your words and explanations never cease to amaze me, for you know how to express something, that everything is so understandable and accurate that there is no misunderstanding. But now, dear friend, I want to bring up the last part of what Ptaah has instructed you to do on behalf of the committee, what you should register within yourself, but not put down in writing. So I will begin by saying that with this I have said all that I was instructed to say and explained. Consequently, I will come here in the near future to dictate to you what was spoken between us. Thereafter, I am to abide by my order to make my visits only sporadic, as is also the order of Ptaah, Florena, Bermunda, and Enjana, and whereby only very sparingly shall the conversations be dictated, as I explained earlier regarding what Ptaah has instructed me to explain as an order on behalf of the committee.
Which you have now done, even though the explanations, which lasted nearly 2 hours, are very rambling. If you have some more time, I would like to present you with an article I wrote yesterday.
I can probably spend the necessary time on that, but after that, I have my duty to attend to, which will take me a few hours.
Here I have written an article regarding the death penalty, and I ask you what you think of it? Read it, please.
Number of executions soaring worldwide.
Death penalty executions are either military or civilian legalized murders. These have now reached a 10-year high worldwide. In 2023, more than 1,500 executions were officially recorded in 15 countries, although China keeps its execution figures under lock and key. The executions are usually carried out in execution vans traveling through the country, with China using the murders or executions specifically and abusing them for political signals. The actual number of these murders worldwide is much higher than is openly admitted, as executions or murders are also ordered elsewhere, on the street or in buildings, even secretly in embassies of states that officially have no death penalty, whereby these murders are concealed as accidents or are concealed altogether. Iran, the former Persia, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq are responsible for over 90% of known murders or executions. According to imprecise figures, at least 975 human beings have been murdered in Iran. In Saudi Arabia, the number has risen to around 345, while in Iraq, only 63 human beings have officially been executed or murdered. The use of the death penalty to suppress freedom of expression is particularly popular with the incompetent and unlawful state power greed of various states. And some of their peoples are murderers and death penalty advocates in the same spirit as their insane and murderous state rulers. Or other parts of the peoples are so intimidated and full of fear that they themselves could come to the cash register if they were to say the slightest thing against the death penalty. So they remain silent and cower, or other parts of the people are so indifferent and unscrupulous that they do not care. Those in favor of the death penalty are only insane, stupid, and delusional, power-hungry, self-opinionated, and conscienceless. This is the case, for example, with U.S. President Donald Trump, who is an unscrupulous and misanthropic advocate of the death penalty, and mendaciously claims that it would protect American families from violent criminals, rapists, murderers, and other monsters. According to official figures, 25 human beings were murdered by so-called executions in the USA in 2024, all of which were carried out against opponents of the death penalty, and their protests went unheeded. Trump's lying claims are absolutely evidence of his dehumanization, and thus further promote the fairy tale that the death penalty in particular would deter human beings from committing crimes. The truth, however, is the opposite. The death penalty never prevents crime, because reality proves that an act of violence, murder, or any other crime is usually committed out of an uncontrolled impulse, even if it has been considered long before the offense is committed, when, how, and where it should be carried out. The full fact is that at the moment or instant when the act of violence is actually carried out, the human being in question is effectively not powerful in terms of his senses, so he acts momentarily and impulsively, just like any predator that instinctively and impulsively tears and kills an animal in order to feed itself. A predator naturally only acts instinctively and impulsively, and therefore not consciously like a human being. Who is a conscious thinker? Who can reflect and therefore think about what he might do and accomplish? But he is just as impulsive as the predator, so he also acts impulsively at a certain moment and has no control over what and how he acts at that moment. This impulsiveness is very often also connected with instinctive action, which is inherent in humans, predators and other animals and creatures and even plants, such as "do not touch me," but which can also not be fully consciously controlled by human beings and leads to a so-called instinctive action, as happens, for example, when a human being acts instinctively and without any thought in a flash to save another human being from mortal danger. Sim Yase Silver Star Center, Wednesday, 9th April 2025, Billy.
As usual, you always find the correct words on any subject. Besides, your article is apt, good, and correct.
Thank you. And I discovered 2 very interesting little books in our Figu shop that I would probably forgotten about. Do you know them?
No, these writings are unknown to me because I have not read all your works yet.
I did not write these myself, because the author of the second and very interesting work is Christian Freener, with pictures and precise descriptions of the contact locations, etc. The first work is no less interesting, and was written by all the members of the Figu and largely covers what concerns my personality. Both works present facts that are otherwise never discussed and are, so to speak, under lock and key, but are explained in detail in both works.
Interesting, please. I would like these works.
Of course, here they are. Michael already got them for me because I thought you probably did not know them because you never asked me about them.
You thought correctly, but you have written many works, of which I have only read about 30 so far.
You still have a few centuries to go if you want to read the rest, about 40 or so. You can do that. You can also do that when I am no longer around because I will not be as old as you.
This sounds so strange to me, and though I have been confronted with this several times, also regarding my grandfather Svath. However, here it is really strange.
I know that, but thinking about it, look here, that email there. I received it from Jose in the early morning at 4 hours, on the 9th of April, from Brazil. I am very happy about this, as I am about other letters that I receive from all over the world from human beings who have found the correct path for their lives through teaching. This is very gratifying and proves to me that I am not endeavoring to spread the truth around the world for nothing.
Dear friend Billy Meyer, how are you, my friend? I have a very interesting and important report for you. Many years have passed since I met 2 brothers whose names are Gustavo and Guillermo. I do not know them personally. Both brothers sent me an email today asking if I could send you a report on their lives. In this e-post here, you can read how the teaching of the truth of creation has greatly influenced the lives of these 2 Brazilian brothers who live in the state of Paraná, in the city of Jaguariaíva in the south of Brazil. Is it possible that you will publish this life report in a next contact report or in a Figu publication? I have correctly translated the life report of the 2 brothers, Gustavo and Guilherme, from Portuguese into German and also into British English with the corresponding corrections that I have made. I am sending you the texts in German, the original texts in Portuguese, and also in English. Thank you very much for everything, Billy. Kind regards from Jose from Brazil.
English language translation. An account of the lives of 2 Brazilian brothers, Jaguariaíva, Paraná, Brazil, 5th April 2025.
Dear Billy Meyer, how are you? We are 2 brothers by the names of Guilherme and Gustavo, and this life story is to testify and corroborate the bonanza that the spiritual teachings given by Billy Edward Albert Meyer Beam can bring to every human being on Earth and, subsequently, to all of Earth's humanity, in order to have a future of peace and harmony, just as it is for both of us. When we were both young, we began to be instructed very deeply for 2 young boys of around 10 years old about spiritual reality through our mother, Mrs. Isabel. Our now deceased mother had a sighting of an extraterrestrial flying object when she was very young, in the state of Paraná, in the city of Jaguariaíva here in Brazil, in the 1970s, a very peculiar sighting because a mother could see the metallic craft with its lights flashing in different bright colors. We both learned from our mother about the importance of meditation for our lives, and that there are forces invisible to the eye at work in the world. We also learned about the afterlife and the benefits of living a life focused on this reality. However, alongside this, we both started drinking alcohol at the age of about 12, and by the age of 15, 16, we both had tried various different drugs and had fallen into addiction. In 2004, around the age of 18, our mother was killed in a car accident, and at that time we were both trapped in religion. But doubts about religious concepts persisted and spurred us on to continue our search for what the real truth is. Then, in 2007, we came across Billy Meyer's texts through an unofficial Portuguese language translation made by Jose Barreto Silva. We instantly recognized, without a shadow of a doubt, that these teachings were definitely the real truth, and from then on we began to study them assiduously. Even so, the vices prevailed because we were still too young to have the wisdom to overcome them. And the vices increased as we both drifted away from the teachings of creation that we had learnt. Over the years, we started using even heavier drugs, namely crack and cocaine, along with a sharp worsening of alcoholism, which culminated in Guilherme's imprisonment, and then Gustavo's pilgrimage to live on the streets in begging. But despite this, we always maintained the conviction that we had found the real truth, and that knowing it what was going to free us from all this, through our personal power. However, even though we were both deeply immersed in the underworld of drugs, we had always been good people with values, just as our mother had taught us from an early age. Over the years, we began to see different and distinctive lights flying in the sky. Some looked like stars in motion, flashing and, on some occasions, emitting stronger lights at low altitude, always at night. Another type of sighting, which was extremely frequent, were small green lights that burned past us, leaving a faint trail of smoke about 10 meters above our heads. For both of us, although it was fantastic, we saw it as something natural. We will not fail to mention here the most remarkable sighting we both had. We decided to keep a vigil at night in a place far from the city, close to nature by a river. We carried the Talmud Germanol in our hands. On the way, we could already see several green lights crossing the sky above our heads. When we reached the spot, we sat down and began to read some passages from Talmud Germanol to talk about it. It was then that we both suddenly saw two strong synchronized lights flying very close to both of us. And we then realized that these lights were part of a single object, which, as far as we could tell, was approximately 7 meters in diameter. Then these lights got even closer, hiding behind some trees that were about 50 meters away from us, and the impression we got was that the flying object was so low that it looked like it was going to land. In total, there was certainly more than 100 sightings, all in the city of Jaguariúna, Paraná, Brazil, starting in 2013, and for several years afterwards. For us both, all these experiences were like warnings or advices, reminding us of the teachings of creation and our duty to evolve towards a better life. In the years that followed, we began to create great inner strength by delving into the teachings again. From the knowledge that the power of thought shapes our present and future life, we were able to free ourselves from addictions and all the degenerative thoughts that got us stuck in drugs and other bad habits. However, just having the knowledge is not enough. You have to put it into practice. And this was the key to making things happen. From then on, our lives changed completely, and today, every day is a beautiful day, in the sense that we feel capable of achieving all the things that until then seemed impossible. Today, we are achieving everything we always dreamed of during our lives, where the main thing was to have a piece of land, to grow our own food, and live a life that was more natural and closer to creation. We believe that all human beings need access to this knowledge that has changed our lives, and so we are working to contribute to the mission, such as learning German language, translating Billy Meyer's books into our native Portuguese language, and continually thinking of new ways to help. And of course, striving to fulfill the meaning of human existence with greatness, improving and evolving day by day. We also take part in an unofficial Figu study group in Brazil, with people who are very far apart. The distances between our city of Jaguariúna, in the state of Paraná, and the cities of the other members of the study group are 1,000 kilometers Porto Alegre, in a southerly direction, 1 member. 650 kilometers Campos do Jordão, in a northerly direction, 1 member. 2,300 kilometers Jacuípe, in a northerly direction, 1 member. And, as a sign that we really are now on the right path, Gustavo had another sighting of an extraterrestrial flying object in March 2025, generating in us a deep sense of honor and gratitude for having found the most precious diamond amidst the mud of false teachings so abundant on Earth today. We would like to express our deep gratitude for all the efforts of Billy Meyer, the guardian of the treasure and our teacher, and all those involved in the correct dissemination of the great teachings of the energy of creation. Solom gam non ben yorda, ganjiber a sola hesperuna. Guilherme Simão Fernandes de Barros, and Gustavo Simão Fernandes de Barros Jaguariúna, Paraná, Brazil, April 5, 2025.
No, these writings are unknown to me because I have not read all your works yet. This shows that your work is bearing fruit, which is very gratifying. But now I want to dictate to you everything that has been said, which will take some time. There probably will not be enough time for everything this morning, so I will come round briefly in the evening so that everything can be done.
That is good, and there is the mail coming and I have to go out. See you in the evening then. Take care, my friend.
Evening, 18.07H.
Here I am again, and you seem tired. Consequently, I am just dictating the rest that I could not do in the morning.
Good. I am really tired because I got up at 1:30 in the morning.
Good. Then I will dictate the rest to you now. After that I have my duty to do, which will also take a while, so I cannot tell you when I will be back. So the following is it. That is all then. But you will not be bored, because you will also be working on other things than what I have to dictate to you. What I still have to tell you, however, is that Arlion greets you and explains that they will all continue to do their work and will not give up. But now goodbye, Edward, dear friend, and again I want to say that I do not know when I will return. For this will be determined according to the situation that arises. Consequently, I, like Bermunda, Florena, and Enjana, will also have to act accordingly.
I do understand that, so I will organize myself accordingly. Take care, Quetzal. See you again soon, and goodbye, dear friend.